Jim Cornette has one of the sharpest minds in wrestling and one of the sharpest tongues. He spent decades in the business, booking shows, managing talent, and falling out with plenty of people along the way. And sometimes those fallouts turn into full-blown feuds. In 2001, Cornette was running talent development in Ohio Valley Wrestling, which was the WWF's main developmental territory at the time. It was his job to train and prepare the next generation of superstars, and one of those future superstars was Brock Lesnar. But according to Cornette, Lesnar didn't show much respect to the people around him and carried himself like he was above the place. He went as far as to say that Brock was a bully to many of the staff working for OVW.
And see, we'd had problems with Brock. He was very respectful to me and to Danny Davis because we were his coaches, because he was one of these college jocks that had been, pushed through college because he was a major athlete and had always been catered to, but he would bully the referees, he'd bully the ring crew. He made one of our referees cry one time because anybody that was a coach or had some standing, Brock would respect, but anybody that he felt was below him, the water boy on the team, you get the idea, college jock, he would fucking belittle and berate. And that, in addition to the fact that he was being paid 5 times as much as the other developmental guys, I expected more out of Brock.
Cornette's girlfriend Stacy was an on-screen manager at the time, and she often got involved physically during matches. Cornette booked a segment where Lesnar had to press slam Stacy. Stacy had recently gotten some new intimate piercings, and she warned Lesnar not to grab her the wrong way during the move. But according to Cornette, Lesnar spent the whole day joking that he was going to do it anyway. And when it came to actually doing the move, he did exactly that. He grabbed her between the legs and squeezed, causing her to scream out in pain. Backstage, she confronted him and they got into an argument, which led to Cornette getting involved and threatening to shoot him.
He's saying, I didn't do it, I didn't mean to do it, I was just kidding, blah, blah, blah. And in the process, he says, F you to her in front of me. And that's where I had to say, look, motherfucker, you need to know this now. Don't say F you to her in front of me, because I won't fight you, I will shoot you. Because here's what he didn't realize, because he'd been protected and pampered and made over for so long, nobody is going to fight Brock Lesnar. If he mouths off and runs his dick liquor about people or 2 people or whatever the fuck, nobody's going to fight him. They're just going to pull out a gun and fucking shoot him. He's a goddamn genetic fucking freak, and nobody's going to fight him. But if he said the wrong thing to the wrong person, they're going to fucking shoot him. And I don't care how tough he is, he ain't going to nip up after a fucking gunshot to the fucking head.
Not long after that incident, Lesnar left developmental, but Cornette has never had much good to say about the Beast Incarnate in the years since.
There couldn't be any 2 people any more different than me and Brock Lesnar. I recognize his talent, and I recognize his athletic ability, but we used to call him Block Lesnar down here in OVW for a reason, because he's a meathead, and I don't like him as a person. Because he not only managed to piss off my referees, but my best friend and my wife, and he didn't fucking give his all and perform to the level that he was being paid at when he was a wrestling school student. And then actually, he got out of OVW 6 months early because he said that his girlfriend at home, who was not Sable, was pregnant and was going to have a baby, and he wanted to move back to Minneapolis, so he got out of the last 6 months of his fucking training before he started up there. And then all of a sudden, when he goes up there, instantly he's great, because now he's making more money, so he's really going to try. So I thought it was a slap in the face to all the guys that were making less than he was, and all the guys who were trying their hardest and didn't get a break that he got because of genetics and fucking fate.
In 2005, WWE was testing out the Boogeyman character in OVW, seeing how the gimmick played out in front of a live crowd before bringing it to national TV. As part of the act, Boogeyman would stalk around the ringside area, trying to scare the fans. One night, Cornette had selected a few developmental wrestlers to sit in the crowd and act terrified on cue. Santino had only just arrived in OVW, and he was selected to be an audience member. But instead of looking terrified, Santino smiled and laughed.
He thought wrestling was a joke. He thinks wrestling's a joke and a fucking clown show and a comedy bus. And he had already been in the OVW class, but not long enough to know that we treated the business seriously down here. But he had been in promotions in Canada, and apparently they were all comedy promotions, and he thought this whole thing was a lark. And so he was laughing because the boogeyman was going to scare his daughter, and it was going to be fun. So anyway, we go to break, and I go back in the locker room. I said, "Who is that fucking guy?" And somebody said he's a member of the amateur class. I said, "Bring him to me." So all the boys are standing around to see what's going to happen because they know what's going to happen. And the boogeyman is right there over my shoulder. And this fucking clown, this little midget who's about 5'5" if I'm 6 feet tall because I'm looking down at him. And he's supposed to be a big-time shooter. He's a legitimate shooter guy. Well, he might be and he might not be. I know that he was telling the guys in the amateur class that he was such a shooter and, basically big dogging him. So anyway, they bring him in and I go, "Why didn't you run from the boogeyman?" He said something, but he was mumbling and I got the bad ear. So I said, "What?" And he said, "Nobody told me I should run from him." Now at that moment, and I got to be honest, I might not have should have slapped him. So when he said, "Nobody told me," I responded by saying, "Well, did I tell you I was going to do this?" And I slapped the shit out of him.
Jim also later claimed that WWE only hired Santino in order to avoid a potential lawsuit. He went on to say that he didn't belong in the wrestling business and mocked his comedy gimmick and said that he never earned his spot. In 2017, both Santino and Cornette were booked to appear at a wrestling convention in Detroit. Santino saw it as a chance to finally clear the air, but Cornette wasn't having any of it. He went off on him, said that he still didn't respect him and still saw him as a joke. The argument escalated to the point where security had to step in and kick them out of the venue. Before he was in ECW, New Jack was part of Smoky Mountain Wrestling. This was a regional promotion that Cornette owned and operated in the early 90s. He first saw New Jack on the indie circuit and thought he was one of the best talkers he'd ever seen, and so he started booking him. The situation became unworkable, so he gave them their notice and tried to get them work elsewhere. But nobody wanted to take them, apart from Paul Heyman, who thought they would be a perfect fit for ECW. It was agreed between Heyman and Cornette that the Gangsters would finish their remaining dates in Smoky Mountain before moving on to ECW. But Paul ended up double-crossing him. He told New Jack and Mustafa to forget about SMW.
That's the last time I ever saw him until they walked in on me in the deal, But then New Jack started cutting promos on me on ECW television. And I was hot at him because I gave him a chance. I put him in the ring with The Undertaker. I put him in the ring with a lot of top guys. I gave him the biggest payoffs that they'd ever had in the business. More than $100 a night for the big shows. But at the same time, I was hot at Paul E because why is he working this fucking angle? ECW and Smoky Mountain are never going to have anything going on because it wouldn't fucking work. We're not going to do an invasion angle, nor are they coming down here. Two different styles, two different territories. What the fuck? Why? It just Paulie was getting jollies from letting the guy knock me. But the problem is Paul is a pathological liar, and I said at the time he'd rather climb a tree and tell a lie than stand on the ground and tell the truth. And he hated that, but it's true. Candido and Tammy went in a hole financially on his say-so. A lot of guys did. He fucked up a lot of people's lives with not just telling them the truth.
In the late 2000s, Cornette was running the creative side of Ring of Honor, and Kevin Owens was working there under the name Kevin Steen. Cornette recognised that Steen was a great talker and a fantastic athlete, but he had problems with his presentation. At the time, there were ongoing negotiations to sell Ring of Honor to a broadcasting company, and Cornette wanted the product to look as professional as possible. He didn't think that Steen had the right image as he wrestled in gym shorts and a t-shirt, and he also suggested that he was too overweight. And they also fell out Over the creative direction of the show, Steen liked using ladders and weapons, while Cornette liked to present a more traditional product.
My experience with Kevin Steen when I was in Ring of Honor, we made him the world champion. He was undefeated for a year. He went through the entire roster. Certainly, I didn't think that, and I always said he was an excellent wrestler and an athlete to be moving around like that with all that excess weight. There's a great athlete buried under there. His wrestling is excellent, and what's more important, his promos, his verbal skills are excellent, and he thinks that he's quick-witted. But the problem was that I saw, number one, we asked him to get in a little bit better shape and to be a little bit more pleasing cosmetically as far as trimming the beard, trimming the hair. I asked him one time, can you get a suit? Just anything. Just dress up a little bit. The baggy shorts and a T-shirt, you're the world champion. Please. Secondly, we asked him to do basically anything we ever asked him to do, and it was a debate, and it was an endless negotiation, and he wanted to take things too far. And I know the Internet audience loved the whole epic saga with he and El Generico in Ring of Honor, but it was a time where we were trying to sell the company to a broadcasting group, and we didn't want people falling through 3 tables with 14 ladders and super kicking the women ring announcers and things that they wanted to do constantly. Because it's not that Kevin Steen was never talented in the ring or on the microphone, it's that he had a piss-poor attitude and never wanted to do anything his employer asked him to do.
In 1997, both Cornette and Vince Russo were part of the WWF's creative team. The company was changing fast, moving away from a product that was focused on kids and towards the chaos of the Attitude Era. Russo was one of the main forces behind that change, while Cornette, on the other hand, absolutely hated it. He believed that wrestling needed logic and realism and saw Russo's writing style as everything that was wrong with the business. But as the WWF's ratings started to climb, Russo gained more power behind the scenes.
Speaking of ballless, gutless pricks, Vince Russo. Hello, Vince. So he's writing for the magazine, and then he insinuates himself. He has good ideas, and he has good ideas at a time when they need good ideas. And you know, I'm not saying he's never had any good ideas, but you know what the problem is? The problem is all the good ideas he's ever had was from watching a goddamn cheap-ass B-movies that he used to rent in his goddamn loser video store. He doesn't know anything about wrestling. That's why when you hear ding, 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 immediately followed 60 seconds later by ding, 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 keep the match as short as possible, because when that bell rings, Vince Russo is lost. Vince Russo is a babe in the woods. Vince Russo is a deer caught in the headlights as long as there's a wrestling match going on. As long as he can make it a phony B-movie script or some goddamn an outhouse in the ring or women having miscarriages or something in some kind of bad taste that appeals to his New York bullshit attitude, that's what Vince Russo wants to do. So get the wrestling matches out of it, because nobody wants to see that shit anyway. So he doesn't want to sell the buildings out. He didn't want to fucking have a great television show. He didn't want to produce a product he can be proud of. Wow, that was a classic match between 2 excellent athletes or fucking great performers. He wants to do fucking mud wrestling with silicone-titted bimbos because he's sexually frustrated, and he wants the internet fans to think he's great because they're the ones that he can listen to. Because the other fans, the ones that pay all the money for all the tickets, they're cheering the stars.
Cornette joined TNA in 2006 as a producer, and not long after, Russo walked through the door.
And I'm sitting at home one day and Dutch calls me, right? And it was September, and Dutch calls me, and I answered the phone. He said, Jimmy, we made some changes in, I can't do Dutch, but you can imagine. Jimmy, we made some changes in the creative team. I said, okay. He said, we fired everybody but me and Jeff. I said, well, there's a start for you. That's good, because I'm not knocking anybody else that was involved with it, but when you got a room full of people, you got a room full, it's a Tower of Babel. It's just everybody nattering. Right? You need a guy and the guy helping the guy, and that's what you need to book wrestling. He said, we hired one guy. I said, who's that? He said, Vince Russo. And see this face, please. Cameraman, pull back, because I actually did this accidentally. I can't do it again. You know, but that was the face. What? I said, what? One of the reasons why I had agreed to come to work for the company was I thought that I was safe because he'd already been there and been fired. And so I thought, okay, we've got past that, and I'll.
He immediately tried to quit, but Jeff Jarrett and Dutch Mantell convinced him to stay. They promised that he wouldn't have to work directly with Russo, but it didn't take long for him to start pitching the same kind of storylines that had driven Jim crazy the first time around. Every week the scripts got worse, and Cornette said that it made him physically sick.
Anyway, Jeff wouldn't take the notice. He said, no. He said, Corny, I'm not going to take your notice. If you don't come back, it means that you're no-showing. And he knows, now he's getting me my old-fashionedness, right? Don't work opposition, don't no-show. I said, oh, come on. He said, and he silver-tongued it. He said, you won't have to talk to him. You won't have to, Dutch is your agent. As a talent, you won't have to speak to him. You won't have any interaction with him. Okay. Didn't want to be I'm not a quitter. Didn't want to be the quitter. God damn, all right. So we coexisted for a couple months, although at Bound for Glory, which I think was in St. Louis that year, I was sick that was when Kurt Angle debuted, right? I'm horribly sick with the flu. I ended up losing my voice. I actually went to the bar the night beforehand and had a couple drinks, tried to loosen my voice up, and of course that just made me think matter. So I ended up, the voice stirred me up, and I ended up the next day when I got in the elevator, I saw a bloody spot where I'd pinned my knuckles, where I'd punched the wall, thinking of fucking Russo, right?
By September 2009, it was over. TNA officially released Cornette because he refused to get behind Russo's creative direction. Months after being let go, he sent TNA an email claiming that he wanted Russo dead. That triggered a legal response, with the company handing the email over to lawyers who described his words as a terroristic threat.
And this lawyer accused me of making these terroristic threats. Like I'm Osama bin Cornette or something. Like I'm the Zodiac Killer. I'm circling Vince Russo's house with my SUV. I wouldn't circle his house. I'd go up and knock on his fucking door, but I don't know where he lives. And he's kept that one a well-guarded secret. I know it's somewhere in Colorado, and that's too far to drive. But I understand he is moving to Nashville.
They notified law enforcement and warned him no more threats or they'd pursue it further. Jim never denied it, and to this day, he hasn't backed down.
Because I'd like nothing better. I would get the biggest raging hard-on in the world if I took a baseball bat and caved your skull in where your brain splattered farther than a goddamn hand grenade blowing up in the middle of a Jell-O factory, you fucking asshole. So fuck you, fuck your family, fuck everybody else that has anything to do with you, and fuck anybody that looks like you.